Black Lives Matter proves once again it is impervious to irony, and America's sheriff takes them to task. That's coming up on today's Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. Thanks for watching the Hot Zone. I'm still on the road, but I've got some good content for you today. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter and what they are doing to America's inner cities right now. First of all, it's important to point out once again that this is an ongoing campaign, and this is not something that started with George Floyd. George Floyd was a convenient excuse for Black Lives Matter to ramp up the violence, ramp up the rhetoric, and to whip up the mob into a frenzy to try to just basically accomplish their communist agenda in the United States. This is an agenda that's been going on for some time. I've been reporting on it for a long time, and I want to show you some of that reporting now because it's extremely relevant even today, a year and a half after I reported it. Check this out. Listen, let's talk a little bit about the crime rate in America. The overall rate has been declining for some time, even as gun ownership has skyrocketed. But in America's big cities, violence is still rampant. And usually that's in places where good citizens have been disarmed. So take Chicago, for example. Every weekend we hear about dozens of new shootings to the point where the city has earned the nickname Chirac because in some places you literally have a better chance of getting shot there than you would in Baghdad. But did you know the murder rate in places like St. Louis and Baltimore is more than twice as bad on a per capita basis as Chicago? Some of this increase in violence is due to the public policies of these cities. Places like Baltimore, the police are being told to, stand down, not bother the criminals, or at least they're not being supported by their leadership if they try to aggressively pursue criminals. So what do? They go on duty, they kind of hold back. And who can blame them? Well, Grant recently interviewed former NYPD Commissioner Bernard Clarke about this topic. And it's really good stuff, so check it out.
Rudy Giuliani was the master, if you will, of the Renaissance of New York, the turnaround on crime. In 1994, when he took over the city, he basically said, look, nobody wants to work or visit or go to school or live in a place where they don't feel safe. So the number one thing we're going to have to do in New York is reduce crime. For every percentage point we reduced crime, we saw increases in tourism, economic development, real estate value. Other mayors around the country, especially in Chicago, they haven't gotten that yet. The mayor of Chicago right now is up for re-election. Gary McCarthy, who used to work for me, is running against him. I think that would be a good change. I think it's all about leadership. The mayors and the governors of this country have to realize crime reduction saves your citizens, and it brings economic development. It brings prosperity to your communities. And a lot of guys just haven't gotten that yet. I think the one good thing that's come out of the Trump administration right now is that the Attorney General has mandated that the Department of Justice go back in all these scenarios where they've implemented these consent decrees and gone after police departments for a lot of this stuff you're talking about. He's mandated that the DOJ goes back to these departments to ensure that it's stuff that's really necessary, because a lot of these consent decrees, one, they cost an enormous amount of money. They pull cops off aggressive policing and active policing assignments. And honestly, from an administrative point of view, from somebody that's been through this, a lot of times it's an enormous waste of money. So, hopefully the DOJ can sort this stuff out. There are departments out there that, may have been in violation of some constitutional issue and have to be dealt with. But the majority of them, I think these consent decrees were wrong. I don't think they should have been put in place. And I think they have to back off. I have to tell you, I was fortunate. I ran Rikers Island in the New York City jail system with 130,000 inmate admissions a year prior to becoming New York City's police commissioner. And I have to tell you, without Rudy Giuliani in place, we would have never seen the reductions in violence in the jail system. We would have never seen a reduction in overtime spending in the jail system. And we would have never seen a reduction in crime like we did in New York City without that leadership. So it's all about leadership. Eddie Johnson can only do as much as the mayor allows him. And the mayors have to realize they have to support the police financially, with training, with equipment, with resources. If they don't do that, the police are going to fail at their jobs and the communities suffer. That's why I think the communities have to take a real look at Chicago, get rid of the mayor, and put a mayor in office that's going to clean up that town.
Yep. All right. Now, I'm going to make a controversial statement here. Are you listening, Timmy? Listen to this. Black Lives Matter has done more damage to the black communities around America than all of the police in America combined. However, I don't think we can only blame Black Lives Matter. What I would say is that, especially listening to this police commissioner, we have to blame the leadership in these cities that are listening to Black Lives Matter and their ridiculous policies that they're pushing for, and basically not allowing our policemen to go out and safeguard these communities. They're not letting these people go out and make the city safer. And it's really sad to see, because morale in these police departments is going through the floor. So Sheriff David Clarke calls himself America's sheriff, and I think that's a really good name for him. We did a whole interview with David Clarke not long ago and made this great piece about it, and I want to share that right now because it has a lot to say, or he has a lot to say, about the Black Lives Matter movement.
When you look back at the time that I was growing up, Milwaukee was a middle-class city, a lot of industry, a lot of jobs, a lot of well-paying, family-supporting jobs. And then when the industrial economy started to leave, replaced by the tech age or the information age, all that industry went away. Milwaukee became a Rust Belt city. So you're losing all of this, that's the middle class. That's the foundation of a strong community, a strong society. And that's been replaced, especially in the black community, by the single parent household, and all of the things that have fallen off from that have been devastating for Milwaukee. So what that meant was we were putting more on the backs of the police. When I started in policing compared to today, it was easy. And you didn't see it as easy back then, but it was because you had a more stable community. The police were seen as, guardians and protectors. The officers knew the people in their squad area, their beat area, if they walked the beat, even in a patrol car. So there was a connection. There was a familiarity. You didn't have the single parent ratio that we have today. 70% of black kids are born into a single family home, 70%. When I grew up as a kid, first of all, you know who my first authority figure was? My dad. And my dad demanded discipline of me. Demanded. He didn't ask for it. Demanded it. He taught me how to respect authority. So when I left the house during the day and I went to school, in grade school, you know who became the authority figure? The teacher. They were an authority figure. And so when I looked, I saw my dad. I said, that's the authority figure. These young kids don't respect their parents, don't respect teachers at school, don't respect other adults in their lives as authority figures. Now they run up against the ultimate authority figure, the cop. And when that meets that undisciplined young kid with no respect for authority, meets that authority figure in the form of a uniform and a badge, the uniform's got to win. I'll tell you why, because we are on the front lines of order and liberty. We have to enforce the law. We can't back down. Teachers back down now. And the kid sees that. He says, teacher, they'll curse the teacher out in the classroom. All right? They'll do the same thing on the street. So we have to win. We have to win because ordered liberty is at stake. The cops make millions of stops a year across the country. Traffic stops, field interview stops. They go to calls for service. Millions. Rarely do they have to use force. Very rarely. It is an aberration when they have to use deadly force. This is a rare occurrence. Now it's been heightened and magnified by the media. This is a breakdown of the underclass society. But that's the heavy lifting. It's easier to just slam the police. We're on the front lines. We're the most visible symbol of government in the community. It's not the elected official. They're rarely seen, right? Cops are there every day. Cops have to deal with some unpleasant things for people, so we're an easy target.
Whose lives matter? Black lives matter! Whose lives matter? Black lives matter!
This is a political construct. This has nothing to do with black lives. It's an ideology. It's a dangerous, hateful, destructive ideology. And it is a very anti-police ideology.
Pigs in the blanket, fry like bacon! Pigs in the blanket, fry like bacon!
These are purveyors of hate toward the American police officer.
Our city is taking our streets back. Your badges no longer scare us. Our city is behind us. Hey, Baltimore!
This is now being presented as the symbol of the new civil rights struggle. Compassion for criminals. We've gone from Rosa Parks, who was an icon in the civil rights struggle, Emmett Till, Dr. Martin Luther King, and others. We've gone from that to Mike Brown, to Eric Garner, to Freddie Gray, to Sandra Bland. Those are icons in the civil rights struggle? No, those are criminals engaged in behavior that contributed toward what happened to them at the end. That's what bothers me more, is that, wait a minute. No, we've come a long way in the civil rights struggle. There was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, it was difficult for blacks to vote. There's an ugly chapter in this country. We don't have that anymore. What can we do to keep this going, this civil rights struggle, as a political construct? So now you got to resort to criminals. And I say, man, how did we fall this far this fast? From Rosa Parks to Mike Brown. The only way you know about this movement or what they claim is happening is through the media. The media knows better. This stuff has all been debunked. That we kill more young black males in police interactions than any other race. It's not even close. It's not even close. If it were close, I'd say, well, it's a coin flip. By a 2-to-1 margin, more white males are killed in police interactions than black males. 2-to-1. It's not even close. The media's role really should be responsible reporting. Look at the data, look at the research, and say, hey, they're making this claim, but it's all emotion. I understand it's the emotion out of these things. But here's what the research shows. They won't print that, then they won't tell that side.
I need a supporter or someone who doesn't support them. I simply report on Black Lives Matter.
Do you condemn the anti-police rhetoric coming from this hateful ideology?
As a journalist sitting here on television, I don't have to condemn anyone, anything. That is something that you should ask other people around the country.
I condemn
their jobs to condemn
just like I condemn the hateful ideology out of groups like the KKK. All right? I condemn it. This has fueled and fanned the flames of this anger toward the American police officer. There's only one group in America, one time, that truly cares about the lives of black people in these urban ghettos. And it's the American police officer who goes down there on a daily basis, puts their life on the line to protect who? Black people.
And I've been all across this country talking to cops. I say cops, I'm old school. I'm a cop. I'm a career cop. As I tell people, I'm a career cop. They're beleaguered right now. We didn't get into this to die, but we volunteered and we're willing to make that sacrifice. That's why I call it the ultimate sacrifice. We're willing to do that to make our community safer. However, we got to know it's worth it. These men and women are leaving behind spouses, children, siblings, parents, and they want to know, hey, this was worth it. So when I see what's going on today, and I go to the Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C., I stand in the middle of that plaza, and I say to myself, what must they be thinking? 20,000 names of law enforcement officers killed in line of duty, and I'd say, what must they be thinking with all this stuff going on now? This constant slamming of the police, defaming us, mischaracterizing us, slandering us. If you lost a sibling, if you lost a spouse, if you lost a son or daughter killed in a line of duty as a cop, what must you be thinking? Their sacrifice was in vain. I know cops. Cops are good people. Are we perfect? Not by any stretch of the imagination. Are law enforcement agencies perfect? Not even close. Being imperfect is part of the human condition. You know what I expect from my people? I send them out every day. They know it. Excellence, not perfection. Excellence. And from law enforcement officers all across this country, we get excellence.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.